Good afternoon. Welcome to the Happel Amufa. This is our first talk. I'm very excited. Welcome to the talents. Welcome to the Berliners in this room, because it's an open session we have today, and it's a mixed crowd, so I'm very, very happy to see you all. The first talk is called Reflections on a Republic of Silence. I'm going to introduce you to two filmmakers, visionary people that have had a profound impact on the documentary landscape internationally, globally, and their filmmaking was not only internationally acclaimed, they also transformed a whole documentary, let's say, movement or documentary scene in their home where they originate from, with the foundation of a documentary film festival back in 2007. It was in Syria, it's called DOX BOX. And it was Syria's first ever documentary film festival, and it became briefly, in short time, it became like a very important hub for the Middle Eastern storytellers, documentary filmmakers, as a platform for creative voices and for exchange and actually also listening to each other. But they're also provocative and explored the depth of human experience with their own films, as they are producers. And their productions have been traveling the world on many festivals. They've been also doing international co-productions, not only their own movies. And they triggered what is important to me, always communication about resilience and identity. And this is something we are looking very much here in the next days, also at our subsequent talks about listening to our inner self, to our creative core, who we are, and trying to keep our ears and eyes open. And listen to narratives that might not be really down our alley, might hurt us even, or might feel challenging. But this is exactly the situation or the idea we have behind these talks. However, for the ongoing repression in Syria, they had to leave the country and they settled in Berlin. While they continued filmmaking, Orwa moved on to become the head and the artistic director of the International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam, IDFA. It's a very renowned festival, as you all know, while Diana was doing her production work and her directing work, and especially with a very, very important film, which lays also a bit of the ground for why we are here. It is a film, a very reflective film, a very personal film called The Republic of Silence. It's a powerful, intimate portrait of the two of them living in exile. It's about memory, resistance, and it played on the Venice Film Festival. I think it was premiered in 2021. I hope I'm not wrong. And they also co-produced at the same year, they presented at the same year in Venice Film Festival Notturno by Gianfranco Rosi, a Golden Beer winner here, which was a very, very interesting double take, because it showed somehow their international co-production activity and their own filmmaking, which was, as I said, very personal. Needless to say, they got many, many awards, like the European Documentary Network Award, the Heart of Sarajevo, the Catherine Cartridge Award, and so on. But what is also important, they founded or co-founded an international coalition of filmmakers at risk, which becomes more and more, unfortunately, more and more important, advocating for artists under risk and oppression these days. And I think this is very worth mentioning, and unfortunately, an institution we need a lot. But actually, that's not the real reason why we invited, or why I invited the two of them. The main reason I invited them, they're extremely warm and generous people. They're very open to share, and they were very, 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 very dear people to start my first edition here. So it's very, 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 give a warm applause to Diana and Orwa. Please welcome on stage. Welcome.
Thank you, Tobias. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm obviously Diana, and this is Orwa, my partner. I have to say that we wanted to start with a couple of questions.
Yeah, hi. How's everybody? Yeah? How are you? Good. Okay. Thank you, Toby. Tobias, I didn't hear a word you said. It was very, like, from behind it's impossible to hear, but I need to ask, did he say good things about us? Yeah? Okay, so thank you, Tobias. Now we know. Now to you. We wanted just to say hello first and ask you, who's here for the first time in Berlinale? Okay. Then, who usually or often considers that they work together with creative partners again and again, or feel that they are part of a team or a group, not working only alone? Okay. Do you have more questions for them?
I think one of the questions we're aching is whether you're positive about the future, that you will be able to do what you want to do as filmmakers.
Are you optimistic about that? Raise your hand if you are. That's a bit grimmer than we expected. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I can say first, it really gives me a great pleasure to be here. And this is mundane, of course, but because exactly 18 years ago, I was sitting in a chair somewhere there as a Berlinale talent participant. So I'm very excited to be here, also talking to you from the other side. Yesterday we were preparing, I mean, for a week or more than a week, we were preparing also with Tobias, brainstorming, and with Christina. And we prepared slides, and we prepared some clips for you to show when Tobias invited us to do this session, Reflections from Republic of Silence, which is a film that we worked on together, was premiered in 2021. Everything was prepared, we were happy, we sent everything hopefully on time. And then yesterday, doubts kicked in. And we were very insecure, and we thought, like, I'm not sure if this is the right thing to share. And so we decided maybe we go back to what we do in every premiere. We read our intentions, you know, because it's a natural anxiety, I think. So I'm going to read for you what we read yesterday, which is the paper of intention or director statements of Republic of Silence. Okay. I feel a little exposed, so. I'm not mute, but silent. I cannot see, but I am not blind. What do you do as a survivor? You either shut up or tell the whole story. How to tell a whole story with a fragmented and sometimes an unregistered memory? How does my silent inner world reflect that unspoken world, or echo an era of revolution, war, immigration, and world politics? How to negotiate in a world uninterested in negotiation? As a filmmaker, words, sounds, and images are delicate elements I deal with. I craft and I order, but how can I create a simple linear story when I don't have the luxury of simplicity? So here I am the story, yet the teller. This is what is left of me and of the story, of how I bore witness and became involved, of how cinema has saved our sanity and probably our lives. So this is the paper of intention, and I would like to share with you a clip of Republic of Silence so we get a little bit situated in what we're going to talk about. Can we?
I just wanted to establish the clip a bit, that this is, we're taking you back now to 2011. In 2011, we were running the 4th edition of the Independent Film Festival that we co-founded and we organized in Syria, DOX BOX. And the 4th edition was in March 2011. So the Arab Spring was on in the entire region, and it started in Syria 3 days after the end of our festival. So we're taking you to a part or a scene from Republic of Silence that is more or less at that moment. Can we play the clip, Andrea?
Okay. Thank you. I know it feels weird to see just a clip of the film where it doesn't make sense, but we try. So I'll give you a little bit of context. This is a film that is 3 hours, and it is deeply personal, deeply political. It's the first time I surrender to the fact that I have to be in front of the camera, not only behind the camera. In this clip, or in the film, I decided, as I say in my paper of intention, I realized or I acknowledged that a story cannot be told in a linear, simple way. I'm working on 3 timelines. One timeline is when we were in Syria, so since I was born until the year 2010 or 11, when the revolution in Syria erupts. Another timeline is during the revolution that the world later decided to call civil war. And then later, as we arrived in Berlin in the exile state, and we remained in the exile state. So I'm mixing timelines over the course of the film. Yeah, this is what I think, and this is, of course, I don't know if you realize, but me and Orwa are there in the preparation of the festival, in the opening of the festival, the last edition, which was 3 days before the revolution erupted, but at that time, Arab Spring has already started in other countries, so the state of affairs was very intense. We were operating under a lot of scrutiny also. And then I was following a friend, childhood friend, who was settled in Germany. That's Rami in the car with his wife and baby. So we wanted to start with this clip before we start with the whole thing. And I hand over Orwa to give you some context, a little bit more context.
So it was when Diana shot this scene that you saw with Rami, the protagonist, or one of the characters, with Sarah, his partner, his wife, we would have never thought that we will end up living in Germany ourselves too. That was a big production trip to film in Germany for people like us who work in a very different context. But then Diana came up with this idea of a new film that involves going to Germany quite often, and that was quite expensive. And for this to be coherent with Diana's multiple timelines overlapping, I'll go back to the beginning. So I'll go back 10 years before 2011 to when we started. 10 years before 2011, or a little more, 11 years before that, we were both pretty young, and we didn't know each other, but each one of us spent time in the year 2000 in a different part of Europe. And we were each aside, without ever meeting each other, trying to see, should we not move to Europe? And somehow we both decided, no. We wanted to go back and work in Syria. And that was when we met. The two persons who are odd enough, stubborn enough, who decided we're staying here. This is where we will work. A bit after that, we decided to start our production company. But we never wanted to be producers, and we never wanted to have a production company, and we never wanted to keep the books for the production company. We never wanted to take care of the taxes. We never wanted to take care of employment and laws and all of that shebang. What we wanted was to make films. But you know, if you have an idea to make a film, you need to go and knock on some door, and then somebody should open the door, and you should say, hey, I'm here to tell you about my project so that you can support me to make a film. And where we were, there was no such door. It was an oppressive regime, so it was only the government that produced films. And we didn't want to be working in that context. We did not want that. So we decided to start our own door, and gradually I found myself more even becoming a door. So, and still I am until today, the door. People call those who work like me as a festival director the gatekeeper. And I'm very critical of gatekeepers in general because I know I am just the door, the actual door. I'm not protecting it. And in that sense, we started by wanting to make as much income as we can from other things. So we started making commercials. We started offering production services for Europeans who went to Syria to make films about the castles their ancestors built, crusaders, all kinds of different colonial history, like borderline offensive productions we helped. We facilitated their work. We were laughing a lot when one of them at the end of a long shoot in Syria looked at me and he said, you know, I must tell you, I was so positively surprised, you look like us. And then it stayed, of course, with us as a core experience that never stopped. We are now 20-something years later, and we still are positively surprising people that we look like them. Now, then there was a moment when Diana decided to make her first long film, and it's called A Woman from Damascus. When Diana developed the idea of that film, it started from a small classified ad in a newspaper that she read something interesting and started thinking of a project. And then we went out to try and get some funding for this film project. And we decided, producer, director, team, let's do this. And that's how I became a producer. And then I am still sometimes finding it very strange when somebody says producer Orwa Nyrabia, and I'm like, it was one morning in bed when Diana said, so how do we do this? And I said, so I'm producer, you're director. We went out and we were really celebrated very much for being not great filmmakers, not talented filmmakers, but for being Syrian. So we were celebrated and welcomed because nobody have seen Syrians before. It was very interesting to meet Syrians. And then the film itself, the making of the film, was a journey of negotiating this particular point. I don't know, Diana, if you feel like talking about this, do you?
The Cinderella syndrome?
The Cinderella syndrome.
I remember we wanted to pitch the film in ITFA Forum at that time. And then I remember one of the mentors or consultant, when I was as one journalist said, Diana is at pains explaining that this is a film about the woman, not the doll, because there is a doll in the film. I was at pains explaining that. And one of the mentors or consultants, or whatever the market sector defined them, said, but you have Cinderella, and you want me to look at her ugly sister. So this is how we were introduced also to the sector of documentary filmmaking and the possibilities and the limitations. And I held this at heart. This film was very successful, by the way, or a version, let's be true. A version of this film was very successful. It went into many, many TV stations and many, many festivals. But that experience, and looking back now, a few years later, I discovered how much it marked me as a woman filmmaker, as a queer woman filmmaker, and as a filmmaker, you know, like, because at that age, that was when we pitched the project, what, 2006? I came to Berlinale in 2007 with this project. So it was a different sector than what you have now. I think you're a bit luckier than we are in some respect, on some levels. But it was a very, very male-dominated mainstream industry or sector. And coming from a male-dominated, very, very much of a male-dominated culture also. For me, I was already holding a lot of scars. So for me, the illusion that Europe or Western world or the more advanced world or richer world would be more sophisticated it was a big disillusionment for me also, like on that level, on filmmaking and on identity level. But we learned a lot, and that was the moment where we also decided that we want to have a festival in Syria, because we didn't have a festival, a documentary film festival or an independent festival, and that's when we decided to also try to create, not an ecosystem, because it's such a big and liberal word, but more like a structure, you know, where we can be supported, we have peers, we can bounce ideas around, not to feel alone in a way. That's when we started DOX BOX, working on DOX BOX.
Thinking of the Berlinale Talents theme of the year, listening courageously, I must admit or say that listening to Diana describe the difficulty of working as a woman, as a queer woman, as a filmmaker in a male-dominated world was an exercise that took me maybe 10 years, if not longer, to learn. So starting from the time when we were young and you would be saying something like what you just said, and me would be thinking, it took years for me to learn to listen and to understand, and then to start seeing my own advantage, my own privileges in this system. But we created a festival, and that, of course, like most of the other things, was a crazy idea that Diana thought about one moment when we were walking in the street, and she just said, how about we make a festival? And I thought, as I always think, facing such ideas, why? It's too much work. And then she insisted, and then we made a festival, and it grew very quickly, and it became quite a success, or a visible event where people remembered and had good experiences. Now, to make a festival in a context of silencing is quite a challenge. I mean, like, there is no environment around us was very inhospitable. We were not making something that made sense to people. We were trying to push, and even one article in the newspaper in our first festival, the headline of the article about our festival said, "Fighting Windmills." And it was very enjoyable, and also it was for me personally, it was quite a prophecy, because when I ended up in the Netherlands, I was all the time thinking about windmills. Like, we started fighting windmills back home and ended up next to them. Fighting those windmills was an experience that had so much deeply convincing reasons, because there was dictatorship, military dictatorship, massive regime of corruption. And then it did not allow us to make what we believe in or to do what we wanted to do. But going out to the rest of the world and seeing that we have to be doing what is expected of us, not what we want to do either, was another kind of shock or surprise. And it was the beginning of a long journey of learning that is not as bitter as I sound now. I know I sound very bitter, but it certainly is not the point. We got from that place to what you saw in this scene, to the moment where the festival ended and the revolution started.
Yes. I think what happened, I don't know which countries you're coming from, but I am supposing not everywhere is roses. People have, for many different reasons, reluctance towards being filmed. In Syria, definitely, in my generation, people feared cameras, because cameras were either a medium of oppression, because most of the lenses were government lenses, or lenses mandated by the dictatorship, or because they felt they cannot share or they would be sharing a lot of spaces where they become more vulnerable and more at scrutiny. But in general, people posed also a lot in front of the camera. So the things, the ready-made exported images were there, ready to be the thing a camera can capture. So it was really not fun being a filmmaker, to be effective. But since the revolution erupted and people and citizens started to document what they see, and also trying to bring evidence, audiovisual evidence of what's happening, and most of those videos were also immediately uploaded to YouTube and to news agencies and so on. This changed. The people, the everyday person, relation with the lens and the camera became more realistic. It is not a selfie kind of, like where I'm posing to. At that time, there was no Instagram. There was Facebook, but not Instagram. But it's not about showing something beautiful or perfect. It's about showing what is wrong. And that was massive change between everyday person and a lens or a camera or the documentation. And that, as a filmmaker, when you go through witnessing such a shift in how people deal with the medium you use, it's a big unbalancing act. And I remember I was at that time following Rami, the person in the car, following him in a genetic research in Syria. And Rami was not able, after the revolution erupted, after a few months, he was unable to come to Syria because of danger, because of his research being on hold. And then I kept on, as Orwa said, I kept on going to Germany to shoot with him as well. And I was, at the same time, we were running the festival or some alternation of a festival also, and producing other films for other filmmakers. So we were sidelining our creative project, individual creative project or career in favor of supporting other filmmakers. But I kept on filming, and I lost the compass because I was chasing a film that doesn't exist anymore, you know, like this genetic research. And at the same time, I was shaken by what's happening in the country, by what's happening to people, by the politics. I also don't know where we're going. Everybody's asking. And it's really, but I had this understanding of filmmaking that you remain loyal to your first intention. What are you looking for? To cut the long story short, that was I started the film in 2010. The revolution erupted 2011, so a few months after I started filming. And we moved to Cairo and then Berlin 2013. So in a couple of years, life changed on all levels. But I remained loyal to the documentation, let's say. And I was feverish, you know, like I was filming everything. I was filming for this film, but I was also filming a lot of what's happening around me, knowing nothing. Like, I don't know why I'm filming. It's just like an obsessive behavior, in a way. But in a moment in 2015, so that was like many years later, my father died. He was in Syria, I was in Damascus. He had a heart attack, so there is nothing political about it. But I was very, very angry. I am an angry person by nature, but I think I've never been that angry before. Like, of course, you lose a piece of yourself and all of this, but I think there is something about being unable to control any aspect of your life, and that you lose the illusion of being backed up, having a back. That made me so angry, and I started writing. And I wrote, like after a few weeks, of course, not immediately. I have a very slow feedback process. And then I started writing. I wrote from 6 in the evening until 11 in the morning. And then I came to Orwa and said, I have a film. I have a new script. And that text I call the mother dough, because it's not really a treatment or a script, but it is what the original text from which I brought the final script of the film. That's when I told Orwa, my producer, I have a film, because I was lost. I was angry with him. I was angry with Syria. I was angry with Germany. I was angry with everyone. And that's when I actually, for the very first time, discovered myself as a filmmaker. Because I allowed myself to be angry, you know, not to write what is pragmatic, and not to write what will be acceptable, and not to disguise things that should not be said. And I'm not talking about censorship, I'm talking about bending to the industry, to what is expected, to the desires of others, to the expectations of others, and to say fuck the notion of explanation. Nobody will understand. Just to be allowed to say people will not understand you because they did not live your life. They don't have your own experience. And it's not my job as a filmmaker to explain. I'm not a news reporter. I'm not a teacher, you know. I'm simply a filmmaker. And that I want to make a film that looks like me, that is interesting to audience of this film, not to every audience around the world. And that's where I also understood that it has to be in order to be my film and this film, it has to let go of the notion of simplicity or linearity. So I came to Orwa and said, I have a film which will be very long. What do you think? And I was very excited about it also. And I made him read, of course, the text is always my first audience. Yeah, and that's how, but we were in Germany by that time, and we just established our new company, and he was learning all the time because it's a completely different construct and understanding of what film is in general compared to our notion, meaning in Syria or in the whole region, filmmaking is a part of art and culture and resilience, modernity. And coming to Germany, we were face to face with a completely different, not completely, but really very different understanding that film is a populist product with seat numbers, where everything is in regimented, let's say, regulated. Everything has a predefined definitions and regulations. Yeah.
That was not all that she said to me, read the text. She also said, I have conditions. I said, okay. She said, I will never pitch this to any financier. You do it. I said, okay. She said, I will never show a video to anybody before I finish the film, because when I find the video sample of this film, I'm finished. That's going to take years. I said, okay. She said, no meetings with financiers for the filmmaker. You do all the meetings yourself. I said, let's see. And then started the journey of trying to get into the system in Europe. And that is another republic of silence, another difficulty of trying to find your way as an immigrant, exilee, as a refugee, whatever our name was at the time. I remember very well how I started trying to get 10 minutes meetings with distributors in Germany, and that took me 6 months and nobody gave me 10 minutes. That's when I started my psychoanalysis. I didn't finish yet. And in a way, you get to this place where you have to adapt to a different place, where the automatic response to who we are is that we are the sample of the refugees. I started at the time writing texts and giving lectures about what I called the super refugee. Because as filmmakers, we are not normal refugees. We are the best refugees that the left wing in Europe can use to show that they are right and that the right wing in Europe are wrong. And that has nothing to do with who we are, what we want, what the film of Diana is going to be. This only has to do with them. It's about them feeling good about themselves and winning in their own battle. But then you start thinking, what should we be? How should we act? Should we be cynical and use it? That's how we're brought up in the third world, by the way. Make the Europeans think that they can save you. That's how they give you the money. If they don't feel they are saviors, no support. Show Europeans all of this, it works. And it worked it still works, of course. But I knew what I was working with. I was working with Diana Jeiroudi, whose film is going to be nothing like their expectation, whose film is going to conform to none of their way of thinking of what would a refugee filmmaker make today. And there was the other, more pragmatist point that simply says, without any discussion, 3 hours too long, but then also, nobody gives a shit about your country. It doesn't sell. It sells in the political sphere, but in tickets, nobody wants to see a film about your country. And that was, of course, said many times. It's not something that I am saying metaphorically here. Still, I had to go back to Diana a few months later and give her my conditions back. Hi, Diana. We calculated 750,000 euro budget. I can get you 500. Can you make the film with that money? Because I don't see how to get you the full budget. And she said, okay, as long as I don't have to meet with them. I said, you don't. And we went on.
Andrea, can I ask you to switch to slide 3? And maybe we say one thing about the conditions, because Orwa's condition was not only that. He also said we need to attend some things, you know, and listen to some people. So I did. No, but of course, when we started to go a little bit back, I like flashbacks. When we started as a producer, director, or whatever it is, of course, we have the official part where he's producing, I'm directing. But I do a lot of producing. He does a lot of director, but we don't take each other credit. And when I look at Republic of Silence now, not after the premiere, now, literally, I feel like, why did I do the credit this way? I should have put him and Guevara, the other characters, as like co-authors, at least, you know, like, so I owe you this. But at that time, I didn't. I saw that it is a film 100% by me as a director and author. But the moment I realized that I should be a subject of my own camera, and Orwa should be a subject of my own camera, in addition to Guevara and Rami, the characters that I wanted to follow, it changed. It did not only change the film, it also changed the making of the film, so how to make the film. Because it's really not a given to film your producer, who's also your partner, who lives in the same bed. It's really not easy to do that for him as well. You know, like, how do you define all these new dynamics? So it's not really only about writing and pitching or getting the money. It's also how you do it with sincerity, with authenticity, with as little vanity as possible, and how to make him surrender. Because not only that he's a producer, but he's also a professional, educated as an actor. So it's really a dynamic that as filmmaker, you always have to deal with your characters, whether fiction or documentary. I started from fiction and I moved to documentary. It's always difficult on how to probe the characters so they can co-author your vision with you, in a way. So that was a lot of challenge.
It was also a challenge to go as producer to pitch alone to a funder and say, objectively, she's a great filmmaker. And she has this amazing character. And it was quite a challenge. But with regards to the point you mentioned about credit as co-author, are you recording this? I'm gonna need a coffee. Okay, so let's go to that.
Okay, maybe we roll the clip, the second clip, Andrea. It seems suited. We're coming up to elections now in a few days. Yeah, we're filmmakers, political object. I think where to go from there? I mean, we can go along more with this conversation, but it would be nice to also have some interaction with the room. It's very hard to see with the lights, so please show your hand if you have a question or an intervention. It doesn't have to be a question, of course. What I can only add for this clip, some context, is that this is, of course, from the towards the final part of the film, I would say, and as refugees or exiles, you hear hate. Hate has a loud voice, you know, like, you really listen to these comments. So for many of my German friends who watched the film, many, not all, the comment was, why did you give the AfD, which is the far-right party in Germany, why did you give them this space in your film? And you remember when I say people will never understand? So this is part of it. For example, some people will never understand that this is what you hear the most. You know, as an outsider, as a newcomer, this is what you hear the loudest. You know, like you feel it in your body. You don't only hear it. So it resonates with you. It stays with you a lot. So for me, of course, they have a space in the film, or in my dreams as well, sometimes. So as a political object, I thought these things that penetrated me through exile, through my filmmaking career, through my creative collaboration, I wanted them to have a space on the big screen, to have a space to live, you know, to be witnessed by audiences, not only by me. And that was part of this process as well of making the film. And it seems now that I knew what I'm doing while I was doing it, but I need to remind you, I'm talking in retrospect, so now it seems more clear to me talking about it, or to Orwa as well, than when we were doing it, you know, because when we were doing the film, we were guessing, because it's a search for the film. It's not really an execution of an idea. It's more like a searching for this idea to manifest in a way in front of your camera and recorder. What I wanted to say before we talk, also Orwa, if you have something, I only wanted to say one thing. I wanted to acknowledge one thing in this reflection, is that both me and Orwa held several positions in this sector because we were trying to build a structure in Damascus, in Syria, and also regionally in the Arab region. And also when we moved to Cairo and then to Berlin, we brought this structure with us, and we created this support organization in Germany for documentary filmmakers. And then Orwa also established Filmmakers at Risk Coalition for Filmmakers at Risk. So we're always surrounded by filmmakers beyond ourselves. And we hold the position sometimes of producing, sometimes as co-authors, sometimes as editor myself, Orwa as a camera person. He did a lot of shooting for other films. Then he's a festival director. We used to run a festival. I am a mentor. I used to be also an educator. So finding ourselves in these different positions, like once holding a camera and once going to the color grading for a film we did not create, or editing footage we didn't film, working with filmmakers who have similar but different also pain and confusions. Once being the supporter, once being the person who's enabling, and once being the person who needs help. It really changed my perspective. I can speak for myself, but it really changed my perspective. When I started as a young filmmaker, I had those militant religious thoughts about filmmaking, you know, like voiceover is bad. That's it, full stop. I don't have to go deeper than this. Sentimentalism, you know, all of these. And I was quite a radical, I would say, you know, like, and then going to festival, running a festival, seeing how the audience deal with the film you create differently, in their, whether it's a generation or a different country, or with this subtitle or that subtitle. at this point of history or that point of history changes the whole perception of the film. Except if it's for dummies, like those mainstream lullabies, those work for everything. But films they land so differently on different audiences. And this conception that I had that the audience is this thing that is called audience changed. And it changed me as a filmmaker because I went to several festivals, and I said because of these different positions, and because I heard other filmmakers, like for example, Lina, I produced Lina for 12 years until she finished her film. And it's always more difficult to produce directors, female directors than male directors, I have to say, because we women have a lot of set of things, but we can talk about it later. And listening to filmmakers struggling with things you struggled with, but at a different point of time, and you see yourself reflected in them, and it changes you, and now when I was doing, for example, Republic of Silence a few years ago, I was very comfortable doing a voiceover because it became just like a light or a shot or a lens. It became just a tool. I was very comfortable with some sentimentalism. It's not bad. It changed me. What I'm saying is that it changed me because then I realized it's not really about me. Filmmaking is about the society in which I am doing the film and in the society in which the film will play, in a way, and it changed me. It's no longer mine, the film, in a way. And by extension, it's also about me, in a way, like it has to be through me, but it's not really about me. Yeah.
I think we should call Tobias to the help. Tobias.
I'm coming. Hello, everyone.
Did you study theater?
Pardon?
Did you study theater? No. Did you study theater?
No, I studied film. Until now, I don't know.
It worked. I mean, that was quite theatrical.
Yeah. Thank you so much so far. We were just thinking, do you want to show your last clip, or when do you want to show your last clip? No, not necessarily, just because we had a technical discussion there. Is there anyone who wants to comment, intervene, speak up? There we see someone. It's very difficult with the light, so you have to really raise your hand, like flag it.
Yeah, I have two questions actually.
Can you briefly, sorry to interrupt you at the very beginning already, can you briefly say who you are or how you work or in what capacity you are?
Yeah, I'm actually not coming from anything like filmmaking, so I'm coming from social work, working in supporting legal and social support for actually Syrian community in Germany. I have two questions, like one more theoretical, one more practical. بس يعني بالبداية بس بدي أقول يعني من شأن الأحداث في سوريا يعني أتمنى لكم وكل السوريين يعني بالمنفى وبالداخل يعني كل خير يعني وعن جد عدالة وعدالة اجتماعية وأخوية يعني عن جد يوم تاريخي. اليوم شفنا الأول فيلم يعني وأنا فكرت قبل نص سنة كنا نقعد هون وهلا في ثورة وفي أمل يعني بس يعني بالبداية شكرا لكم كمان من شان يعني شفت أمل كمان بالفيلم الأول يعني بس هاي coming to the questions.
Thank you. Do you want me to translate for you? Is it okay for the audience?
I think we all would love to hear that.
The gentleman was wishing us all the best for the Syrian people and the Syrian state of affairs inside Syria and outside Syria with warm words. Thank you.
I was just thinking like filmmakers as a political objects.
Did you study theater?
Actually, I did.
I know. I know you did, that's why. he's not good with compliments, so it's... Nothing happened.
Chairs. Not very good chairs.
The chairs are horrible, I see that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's the question, it's not the chair.
Coming back to from this situation, yeah. You talked about the documentation, like the films that the people loaded up from the handys and the mobile device. And I mean, we always said the Syrian revolution or the mass atrocities in Syria were the most or the best documented crimes in the modern times. And the paradox, I would say, and I think this is also what you already kind of touched the topic. It was the most documented. At the same time, we could say, especially from the West, it was not seen. Like how, and because we talk about documentary film, and you are documentary filmmakers, and then we have a situation where there are all of these documents outside, but nobody is seeing them in a sense. So my question was like, as a documentary filmmaker, what do you make out of this kind of paradox? So this is more the theoretical question. And the more practical question, the festival was in Halab, and do you know whether the movie, the theater, survived the mass bombing of the Russian Air Force? And is there hope that the new generation will in some day be in the same movie theater and make a new festival? That is the more practical question. Thank you. شكرا لكم وبالتوفيق.
Thank you. I mean, it's a very and thank you for the work you do supporting exiles and refugees. Also, that's very important. I'll try to be brief responding or discussing the theoretical question you raise, and I think in a way, yes, that the Arab Spring and particularly the Syrian disaster, because it's the biggest example in this context, was very interesting because it was all about examining the truth as a concept. Everybody was talking about truth and post-truth in the West from a Trump mentality, but actually everybody in the West was, all the media, left and right and center and up and down, everybody was looking at all the videos from citizen journalists coming out of Syria and similar countries, not only Syria, and always mentioning the sentence, although it could not be verified, this is what this video claims. And that was very interesting because it's a video. And AI was not, generative AI was not as developed back then. So we were just seeing it. What is it that is not verified? So there is always a very interesting point of what is the whole question of the truth. Because of course the context and interpretation is endless. But in the context of a news broadcast, for example, no, it is not. It's pretty simple. Somebody was killed, for example. Now, this, in a way, I think, liberated film. Because when we make a film, we know that this is subjective. We know that this is our truth. And we, to a certain extent, are free from our fear that you might not believe. In Diana's film, there's a scene where I am saying on a stage in New York, I think, or something, we do not die so that you believe. So you believing is not always not you personally, but somebody out there believing or not believing is not in itself the purpose of the life and death of a whole population. So I think this experience liberated the truth, and it became just mine. Because I will not be dying again just for somebody in Washington, D.C., or Berlin, or Paris, or London to believe that I am not lying. And that's what brings poetry back into cinema, in a way, the real freedom of not giving a shit anymore, because it's so cynical and absurd and ridiculous. And I must say, yes, the Syrian atrocities in Syria were the best documented in history of atrocities until Gaza happened. And Gaza is better documented than Syria. And look what people saw and what people did. Not much, you know, like it's in high definition, it's in 4K, Gaza. But not much happened, not much was done. So in a way, this being free, emancipated as filmmakers from the work of trying to convince that this is the truth is, to me, at the core of what it means to have artistic subjectivity that is meaningful, that is connected to the people around us, to our partners, because it's not one person's truth also. It's the truth of a web of human beings who are around and inside a film like this or that. If that's an answer.
Like from a very objective or like from an outsider perspective, that's also why, for me, your film back then told me so much more about what was going on, not only in Syria, like factually, but also what it does to people, population, artists, creative people. I mean, we are overwhelmed by so many pictures, like noise, literally, or visually, whatever you want to call that noise. You can also call it so much visual noise that our brains are not processing it as something we have to react on, because we are totally overwhelmed. At least I personally am, every morning or every evening or whatever. But this retreat to the very personal, to the very subjective, like you said, this very vulnerability of the two of you and the people around you, this observation, that brought me so much access. And I think this is what I'm always fascinated of people, how much I get the empathy out of the personal, and I don't need to see what I know, and I don't want to be preached what I think I've seen already. It is this reflection and this ongoing reflection. So I really look forward for you to build on that. However, because there's a new situation now in Syria, for example, or you've been so different phases of your life. So this continuation and reflection, I think, makes it so beautiful, and that's why we have you here also.
And I think there was something very special about the experience of working with Diana on this project, which was the artistic courage associated with, for example, it took me time to see what she meant when I would be saying, yeah, but you are writing and imagining a whole scene about the informers in the cinema writing reports about our festival, but we never filmed them. We don't have images of that. In another part of the film, she has a scene about my own detention when I was imprisoned, and we have zero images of that. There's no image to that incident. And Diana was always smiling at this, saying, but it's cinema. I make it. I will make the scene. You know, and it is not only about having the real image of a camera that was on the spot at that time, whether it's documentary or not, it's the same. I am making this scene, and making the scene is a more complex thing than having the actual real images.
Picture.
Yes.
Hello, thank you very much for the talk. We know each other a little bit. My name is Olga, I'm from Ukraine, I'm a documentary film director. I actually wanted to reflect and also ask you, maybe reflect on what I'm saying, is you asked us in the very beginning, how do we film, optimistic or pessimistic regarding the artistic possibilities or like future of filmmaking and the films you do and filmmaking. What you think, I do think it's a kind of a philosophy. It's not only art, it includes a lot of ethical and morality questions. And it goes about a lot about the deepness of involvement of an audience inside the filmmaking process, which is, I hope, I also try to find and do in my work, and which I struggle to do is to talk with financiers, with broadcasters, distributors, with pitching the film, with writing also the film. Like finding the courage to say, that's what how I want to do, is what you, Diana, say, and like I have a film, I don't go not to pitch. I'm really curious how, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more, how do you deal with like the confidence of having this vision and you know what you want to do, and then maybe you, Orwa, can also like continue this talking like, okay, and what I do, like step by step, or like we do film with no budget and then we do completely independent and then we somehow maybe will success or not, but in an amount of films that are rising and the competitions that are rising, and on every page you come, you try to say about it. You read a beautifully director's note, but I imagine like standing without not yet made film, reading it from a stage, I'm gonna have a lot of questions like, where's the story gonna lead? Like, what is the main point? And also these questions that very concrete that the financiers is asking you. And then just like, yeah, but filmmaking is not only about the point A to B. It's also about the process of and philosophy of morality questions we ask. I don't know, maybe I'm too complicated talking, but it's like a reflection of what you've talked and the struggles, I think, we as a filmmaker.
No, I understand you perfectly, Olga, because whatever you say, I've been there, so I understand what you're talking about. So number one, I'm not courageous with finances. I have to say I'm probably a bit rude. So I'm really not courageous. I usually just go and whine for Orwa, and he does the thing, so kind of like, and that's a privilege. I know not every director has a producer they're working with confidently, and this took decades. But the partnership, I mean, not this. I am very courageous when I'm producing, because I understood and I learned from Orwa both that a producer is a protector. Like part of producing is also protecting the director. Because when I'm a director, I'm very vulnerable. I'm very sensitive. I'm like a child. I really don't listen well. Everything hurts me. Every question is offensive to me. I don't know why, but it just is how I become as a director. It doesn't have to be very personal. This one was very personal. I had a few films under my belt, so I had some skill. I'm not a school director. I didn't study cinema, so there was nothing to lean on, like just saying, oh, I am a graduate of blah, blah, blah. No. So I was also very aware of my lack of skill or proof when I started. So I understood that the part of the role of producing is to protect the vulnerability of the director at stages, because it changes also. And when I am producing, I'm very courageous. I'm pitching the project, and I usually tell my mentees or filmmakers I work with, pitch the film you are sure you'll do. Don't pitch your hesitations. Because then you are creating a trap for yourself, So the simplest form of your film, or the thing that you know for sure will be there, because then the discussion is very small and contained, and you can deal with it. And I learned that from producing, not from directing. I learned it that as a producer, when I have a project, regardless if the filmmaker is experienced or not, that I know for sure we will have this in the film, and that's what I will present. And sometimes I don't pitch a film when the director is not ready. Again, the clip I wanted to show was from 5 Seasons of Revolution, a film that I produced for 11 years with, whether 12 or 11, please forgive me, I can't remember now. But the director was first-time director, and she was not in very good space when we were doing the film. So at one point, I stopped pitching it. I stopped applying for funding because I didn't have, as a producer, any certainty that I can pitch. And financiers and TV stations and distributors need certainties, especially in the West. They need a certain date, a certain storyline, a certain, something that they can put in a contract, in a way, to simplify things. Now, I don't want to reduce people too much, but it gives you a hint. But of course, if you're producing yourself, it's very difficult position when you're both the director and the producer. It's really difficult, so you need to take care of who's the priority now. Is it you as the director or the producer? Who needs to survive at this moment? But it's really a tricky place, so I don't know, Olga, if that's where you are or...
Yeah.
My dear precious Olga, two very quick points responding to this. First, there are films and films. And cinema is so big and wide and diverse that people can be very different. The way we work has always been that the film is not just another film. It is kind of more important or precious. It has value to us personally, but maybe to others, to a bigger group of people. That is, to us, sacred in the most unreligious meaning of the word, but it is sacred. So if there will be money that would take away freedom, and we would be poor if we don't take it, it's already done, we're poor. There is no, like the safety of having to be realistic and pragmatic and serious about surviving with livelihood and income and paying this and paying that and so on is not a priority that goes before the film. And that is a problem, maybe. I mean, I envy colleagues who work with lighter spirit, but that's how it is. So it was always about films like Republic of Silence and how when I said to Diana, it's only this much money that we can get, I didn't get her that money yet when I said that. I was just calculating. It was because that was the maximum money we could get from people who would not have a contract that allows them to change the film or allows them to give binding comments or feedback on the film. That was the maximum in that moment, in that context. So, in that sense, I just remember one, still, I mean, again, cinema is much more democratic than that, and somebody can be interested in making light-hearted, simple films that they enjoy and the audience loves and I enjoy, and they are much safer. That's also a possibility and can be artistically interesting. So it is also about if each film person finding their own place. It's not fully free because it also is about where you live, how it happened at this moment in history, who won the elections, what did they do, who died, who was murdered. It all affects who you are as an artist, as a filmmaker. So the last thing I want to say here is, back to the beginning of Diana's point earlier in this talk, once I had this amazing, amazing privilege of doing a talk like this with D.A. Pennebaker and Chris Hegedus. Pennebaker, the late, great filmmaker who is one of the fathers of direct cinema. We were in Damascus in DOX BOX in the festival, and I said to Penny, I mean, I was like looking at God, and I was telling him, how the hell do you do it? It's been since 1956 that you've been making films non-stop. How do you continue? And he looked at me and he said, making films like these, like the films I make, is just like wanting to travel the whole world in a broken car. The only thing you can do is to find the best companion. So that is the partnership behind what can be different cinema, I think. It is not the funding, it is not the pitching, it is not the market that will welcome different cinema. It is us coming into these kinds of partnerships, companionships, where we accept together to sit in a broken car and we insist on traveling the world. And we learn different ways of saying, yeah, we made it. Because the way we are so proud that we made it might not be called success in the books of others. Because the way that you are expected to be successful and the list of things you must achieve so that you are considered successful, are imposed. You might have other things, other accomplishments that make you feel, well, we did it, it's good.
And I want to add one thing, Olga, because I think also, I said before very quickly that producing for women is more difficult. That was my experience in every production we had. It's always, I am a woman, yeah? So as a producer, I am less advantaged than Orwa also. But when I'm a woman producing for a male filmmaker, it goes like this. When with a woman, it's like, it's really broken car. And that has to do with a lot of dynamics that is in the sector until today. It doesn't matter, even if you pitch to women support scheme, it's the same. Because also in my generation, the generation I used to pitch for or seek their support were also different kind of women and different kind of men than those who are now sitting in their seats. Some of them are still there, but anyway. So it's difficult. And it's difficult if you are making it and pitching, then there is something that has to be articulated that is difficult to articulate. But again, it's about the audience. If you know your film, and you know part of your film. You don't know the whole film because, as you say, it's a research. You're searching for it. But there are some things, there is a place where you have to step on your heart, until it's painful enough so that you come up with a sentence. You come up with the articulation of this thing, so that you can get people involved in it. There has to be some level of confidence in people. Even if they are on the surface, they don't seem empathetic enough, or there is some, I learned from Orwa, he's more of a people person than I am. I'm sure you noticed that. I learned from him a lot of skills in that term, because for me, I'm super judgmental, like in fraction of a second, I know there is no point for this conversation. So I retire immediately, and I give up too early. And I learned from him that you can still get somebody inside, like if you need to, it's easier said than done, but as I say, but it is something about like making the person interested in your, not dealing with the audience as a block, and not dealing with the financiers as a block. These are people, they know, they like or respond to a certain cue. Whether it's your film or a scene or a trailer, it's just about how to do that. It's not about changing your film or what you want to make. It's about changing how you talk about your film, in a way. You see what I mean? So, and it has to do with the fact that you give confidence to them. I don't know if you have stage fright. That's a different thing, but no. But I'm just saying that I'm just acknowledging that there is something about the vulnerability that has to be addressed.
Yeah, I agree. I've been a distributor for a long time in my life, and it is also about the filmmakers inviting you, sitting maybe on the back seat of this broken car, but you have to be confident you don't crash it, because sitting on the back seat you have no control, basically. So this is also a negotiation you have to understand from the other point of view. So at least if you know the way where you want to go with that car, this is the importance, what you just said, like this is the core, this is the way, this is the route to a goal, then you're able. But if you lose your way and you're in a broken car, there's a bit too much insecurity, so you might not want to enter it. Depends on your personality as a partner of whatever also. We are in the end of the time, actually. We could have one big question. I saw you raising, so I don't want to be judgmental. You fight? I don't know.
Toss a coin.
Okay, you have a collective question. And
so thank you for sharing. And I'm a high school student from Macau, and so I want to ask that what are your future projects or aspirations as filmmakers, and how do you envision the future of documentary filmmaking in the Arab world? And the last is, what advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers from the regions experiencing conflicts? Thank you.
so we have another 1.5 hours. 3 questions. Choose one. Which one is the most important?
I think,
The last one, maybe. What advice?
Yeah, the last one.
Advice.
I don't know.
Thank you.
For filmmakers in conflicted regions, you said? Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
I mean, like a broken record, partnership, like confidence, camaraderie. You need to trust. It's a lot of work. It's not easy to, it took us decades to build this trust. It's not automatically that we met each other and we trusted each other. On the contrary, we were young, we're doubtful. We don't know who we are. We don't know who's the next person sitting next to us, and we're learning about ourselves. And so partnership is really difficult, but you need a partnership. You need a partnership. You need somebody to trust, and trust cannot be made up. It's a lot of work. You need to give confidence to somebody and wait for them to, what's the word that I always struggle to pronounce it? Reciprocate?
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
I have the same
This
problem.
one?
I know it when I see it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can read it also silently.
Yeah.
But you all know it maybe
But
also.
you know the thing, it's
The
just,
thing.
you need to give confidence to somebody and just wait for them to pay it back and see if this works, no?
Yeah, and I think the other advice I would think is essential is do not be afraid to make mistakes so that you learn how terrible propaganda is. Because the first thing that we find ourselves doing when we are in extreme political situations is propaganda. We start trying to promote what's good, according to us. And this violates what cinema is, what the freedom of cinema is. So trying to be purposeful, impactful, and change the reality of the good people through cinema, changing the minds of those in power, for example, I think is a huge mistake, because it takes away even the possibility of doing just that. Because if you really want to change things, you need to be much more sincere and honest than trying to change things, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.